Okay.
Uh, Tony, how has doing this documentary, how has it how's it affected you?
It's been very interesting. This was actually the first documentary that I did, but I think the biggest thing with it is the subject matter. Domestic violence, and it's something that's always been around, but I think a lot of people still to this point don't want to talk about it. And that's been one of the things that's been a little bit frustrating to us putting this together, is because we've put together some PSAs and tried to get some feedback from different people, and we're not getting that, which is not necessarily a surprise, but it just goes to show that people are still trying to hide or still trying to keep it a secret as far as what's going on. I've worked around women most of the 25, 30 years that I've been in the workforce. So I get to see a little bit of everything. And a lot of women are good at hiding it, but a lot of times you can tell that something is going on. So, and I try to be there to help when I can. But this documentary has been something that has really been an eye opener. And, working with UBG, this was a total surprise, because we first met in 2000, like we said before, with the candy bar rappers and everything at the Black Women's Expo. But meeting you at that time, I saw a professional woman, somebody that was very intelligent and was very creative, and that's what caught my attention. Never knowing, never knowing that you had all of this going on in your life. And when you came to me to do the documentary, it was funny because we've always had contact and lost contact. We always seem to find each other at the right time. And when I decided to come to you, I was coming to you about another project that you were working on. And you said, no, I have something else for you to work on. And it was this documentary. And it's been a huge learning experience for me. More than anything, learning a lot about the audio portion of putting together a production, and learning how to shoot different angles, learning how to deal with a variety of people, attitudes, personalities, and just being passionate about what you want to do and how you want it to work, how you want to accomplish your goal and everything. So it's been really interesting.
Okay. So, in terms of having a totally different perspective or outlook on domestic violence and abuse, what would you say to those who, after working with me and just seeing how it has affected me, what do you say to those out there if they come across a friend or a family member and they know that she has been or is in an abusive situation, or even after she's come out of an abusive situation, what advice can you give them?
Some of the same things that you talked about is you have to talk about it. No matter how difficult it is, talk about certain aspects of it. You don't have to go into great detail, but let people know that something is wrong, that something is going on, and that you're trying to get some help. Because if you don't, it does build up. It does escalate from one thing to another. And you never want it to get to the point where it gets completely violent, where there's the point of calling the police out, the point of, pulling weapons on one another and different things like that. Because I've always had a deep respect for women. I can only remember one time that I actually hit a person, a woman, and it was in defense. This is when my daughter was very little, probably about 7 or 8 months old. And my daughter has always been very attached to me. And her mother and I got into an argument about something. I'm not one for arguments in the first place. I try to keep the peace. I'm a very laid back person. But she just wouldn't let some situation go. And she hit me across the face once, and I'm holding my daughter in my arm. She hits me again. And I don't want to do anything because I'm not a violent person. So she hits me a third time, and then I hit her once. And from that point on, we never had any problems. And I think the thing with that was, I guess I had to show her that I was a man, and it wasn't an abusive relationship at all. Not at all. But I guess she wanted to see that I would stand up and be a man, that I wasn't just going to take anything. And I guess I had to do that in order for her to show that I was a man. But
so do you think that men have this perception or this ideal that in order to be a man that they have to show the woman, I'll show you, I'm going to put her in her place and things like that. Do you think that that's how most men think?
no, especially a good man. If a good man really loves you and respects you, he's not going to do anything to harm you. If he does anything to make you feel bad, that hurts him on the inside. If he's a real man that truly loves and cares about you, anything that he does that truly upsets you, that upset him as well. Now, this is a real man. I've had instances where, and we talked about this earlier, where when I first met you at that business conference, I saw a beautiful lady that I definitely wanted to interview, but I didn't want to come across as being, I'm doing this to try to hit on you, because that's not what it was about. I'm strictly about business and everything. And when I see somebody is doing something to better themselves that has a lot of potential, I want to try to push them no matter what. And if I see that you have this desire to do this, to do that, anything that I can do to help you move along, I don't have a problem doing that. So when it comes to women in relationships, I've never been one with that old school idea of that the woman's place is in the home. I've always believed in every woman knowing how to cook, clean, to be able to handle their own business, as well as every man should be able to do the same thing. Never depend on anybody else, because even in a good relationship, you can be in a happy marriage. Your husband or your wife could up and die. What are you going to do? So you have to be able to take care of yourself. And, if you support one another more than anything, I think that's what most men look for more than anything. If they're not afraid to talk about it, this macho thing is always getting in the way. But if they're not afraid to talk about it, a lot of times I think most men just want a woman to be supportive and be in their corner. Because I don't care what it is that you want to do. If it's something that's positive and it's moving you forward, I would bend over backwards to help you. I would do whatever it takes, and I'm not gonna dog you out. I'm not gonna talk about how you should have did this or how you should have did that. I'll try to provide input, but it's not gonna be that, well, that's why this didn't work, because you should have did this and you should have did that. We're here to help one another. And domestic violence right now is a one-way street, and the man wants to be completely in control. And I feel that any man that has to do all of that, not only does he not have any control, he doesn't have any self-respect for himself or his partner. There's definitely some underlying issues from the past that he doesn't want to talk about. And he's afraid that his boys, so to speak, is going to look at him as being a punk. And it's not about that. Anything else?
So, as you've been filming and going through, taking a look at the footage, has it opened your eyes more, or not to say open your eyes more, but do you see, how do you view things differently when it comes to situations and interaction. Just knowing, I mean, just really hearing, because you've filmed quite a few survivors,
Right.
and you've heard their stories. And some of the stories seem similar,
Hmm.
and it's the same thing. Different faces,
Right.
but the same thing. How does that how does that make you feel?
It's really been very difficult. Um, Listening to the interviews, going back, looking over the tapes to start doing the editing process and everything. It has been very difficult and very emotional. I used to think in the past that that it was a simple process. If you were being abused, just walk away. But it's not that simple. And I knew that all along, but hearing these stories and being able to put this documentary together, I'm really finding out why it's not that easy to just walk away. Every woman has a reason, has a situation. Um, there's something that's keeping them there. There's a couple of things that are pretty much the same across the board for everybody that I've talked to, such as the low self-esteem, the fear, and wanting to make the relationship work. Those are, and a lot of people always talk about women are more emotional than men, and that's true to a certain degree. But I think part of that is because women of African American descent have always had this idea of growing up and being a Cinderella type thing and having, Prince Charming come into their life and just rescue them and take them away from everything. But it's a situation where you still have to be strong within yourself. If you look for somebody else, and this is something that's, to me, that's very important. If you look to somebody else to make you happy, you're lost. You cannot, if you're not happy with yourself, it doesn't matter who you have in your life. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter what suburb you live in. If you have a condo, you're driving a Lexus, whatever the case may be, you can have all of that. But if you're still not happy with yourself, none of that matters. Because after a long day of work, whether you're married or single, you're still going to go home and you're going to be miserable because you have nobody to share it with. You have nobody that you can talk to, some of the accolades or some of the promises that you have or want to do and travel and different things like that. If you don't have anybody to share that with, you're a lonely person. You're a lonely soul. So you have to first find yourself. And I think once you do that, that's another healing process as far as turning things around. And the biggest thing is trying to figure out how did the cycle start or what started it. And never blame yourself because it's not your fault. It's not the woman's fault, and it's not the man's fault if he's being abused. It's not your fault. There's something else that's going on, and you just have to get to the underlying story and try to deal with it. But if it doesn't get any better, you have to talk about it and you have to find a way out. If you don't, it will escalate and it's going to get worse. So with putting this documentary together, we're hoping more than anything that people look at this not as a movie. This is not a movie. This is true life situations. These are people that have actually been through abuse, and everything that you'll see is real life. So hopefully it'll make you think, it'll bring awareness, and it'll allow people to stand up and start talking about this issue because it's been going on for a long time and it's going to continue, and it starts early. It's at the point where it's starting in elementary school and people don't realize it. They think it's just kids having fun. It's abuse and we have to do something about it.
So, what would you say to the young boys and men um, that are growing up in this environment where it seems like violence is the norm. What do you say to a young man in terms of how to treat a young woman or a girl?
Well, we have to go back to the one thing that I live by is respect. I think that's one of the biggest problems with a lot of the young people these days is that they don't have respect for themselves. So if you don't respect yourself, you're definitely not going to respect anybody else. And for the young men, you don't have to be hard to be a gentleman. You know, there's still nothing wrong with treating a lady out to dinner, opening the car door, you know, opening up any door for them. You know, when you walk down the street with your girlfriend, your wife, or whoever, be proud. You know, if you're holding hands or arm in arm, be proud of that. And even when you walk by your boys, you don't have to have that hard look all the time. You know, I know it's a lot of peer pressure and everything, but it doesn't make you. You know, you don't have to be a follower. Be a leader. Be your own individual person. And if you do that, you'll find out that people will start clinging to you because they respect you for who you are as an individual. They see that you're not one of those followers, or that, you know, you don't have to go up to a woman and say, hey, be this and hey, be that, you know, in order to get some respect. You know, unfortunately, that's what some of these young people look for. Some of the young girls like that kind of talk. You know, they want to see, you know, their man walking around with his pants hanging down his ass, you know. But, you know, that can only go so far. You can't walk into corporate America like that. The only way that you will survive is that you have to get your own business, a successful business. And wearing that type of attire is only going to put you in one or two categories. It's not going to put you in that professional category. A lot of these young men now, and young women, don't know how to wear professional clothes. Most of these young guys don't know how to tie a tie. You know, they don't even have a suit to wear unless they're going to a funeral. And that's a sad thing. But it's up to us as parents, as mentors, as individuals, to try to turn it around for them. And, you know, that's one of the things that I've always believed in is mentoring and trying to teach these youngsters more about, you know, how to carry themselves, how to be respectful, how to treat a woman. You know, because all women want to be treated like a woman. You know, they're still looking for that Prince Charming. And you know how you always hear it now that the young girls or women, they want somebody to be a man, to be sensitive, but at the same time they want a roughneck. You know, so it's like, okay, what do you really want?
And don't you think that that's maybe society?
Oh, society has a lot to do with it.
What you see on the television,
Mm-hmm.
what you see in television, like the video shows, like, you know.
Right.
Yeah, what you see.
Society has a lot to do with it. I had an opportunity to go down to tape a hip hop concert one weekend in Detroit, and I was just shocked to see not only the turnout, but how they introduced themselves to everybody. I mean, it was a sold-out concert. Some great name acts were there, but every woman, every young girl that was there was dressed like she was ready to be in a music video, as one of those, what they call them, hip-hop divas or video vixen. Mm-hmm. And all of the young guys, they were all tattooed up from head to toe, pants hanging down halfway down their butt, you know, trying to look hard, and all of them were trying to be a rapper.
So do you think that events, situations, or just things you see in the movie, don't you think that kind of perpetuates the violence that we see today?
It does. It does, because, and not only that, in just the movies and TV, but video games. All of that, promotes violence, and these young people think that that's their only way of survival. That they, because of the way that the economy is now, they can't get out and find a regular 9 to 5 job. So they've got to get out and hustle and, join gangs and, deal drugs and things like that in order to be accepted. A lot of them talk about now, they don't have a so-called father figure. My mom raised 8 of us. I am 49 now, and I haven't seen my father since I was probably 5 years old. I don't hate him. He's still alive. He lives probably about 4 hours away in Illinois. I had an opportunity to go see him probably about a month or two ago, but I didn't want to because he's a stranger. I don't know him.
Was there any violence there or
No.
abuse there between your parents?
No, none at all. None at all. It's just that after a certain age, my mom's parents were getting older, and we decided to leave Illinois, where I grew up and where I was born, and move to Tennessee. And I tried to keep in contact with him, along with my other sisters and brothers. I sent him invitations to my graduation and everything, and never got anything. But I didn't let that stop me, because I had to prove a point to my mom, for one, that no matter what she did all the right things. And, she died 3.5, going on 4 years ago. And all of this that you see that I do is because of her. The TV 34, that's a tribute to my mom. It's not a local station or cable station. It's my production company, and it's a tribute to my mom for everything that she's helped me accomplish.
Great. So, where do you, what is your intention as a director of this project here, this film? What is it that you would like to see accomplished as far as your goal as a director?
What I'm hoping, as a director of this project, is to, when we finally premiere the documentary, is that people come up to us and really, truly say that, I'm so glad that you did this. I'm going to take a stand. I'm going to be supportive. I'm going to turn things around. Because this is a documentary. It's a piece of information. And that's what we want to use it for, is to inform and to educate. Because you can see all of the movies all day long about this, and this is all made up. But this is true life information. So we're hoping that, and especially me, I'm hoping that people will take this and say, for one, I can't believe that you actually did this. And then two, is to say that, wow, man, that was pretty good. That was, I don't know how you managed to talk about that subject and get the people to talk about everything like that, but it was an eye-opener. It's definitely going to make me think twice about relationships, especially on behalf of the men. It's going to make me think twice about, how I treat my woman or any relationship that I'm involved in. And hopefully it'll bring back some respect and some communication, more than anything. Communication between everyone about what we can do, how we can turn this around. Well, I know it's not going to go away. Unfortunately, this is something that's just not going to go away, but it can get better. And that's our hope, is that as we put this together and we showcase this product or this documentary for everybody to see, is that it does bring awareness and people really start talking about it again.